Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, the latest news on Christian Wilkins, and I'm going to be honest, it's not good news. Also, I got some juicy Raiders roster rumors around some players that are currently on the bubble from a Raiders insider. I'm going to be breaking that all down today here on the Raiders Report. If you don't know, my name is Mitchell Renz, and when I saw this news come out today, I knew what is going on behind the scenes, and I know kind of what's going on behind the scenes with Christian Wilkins, but this photo here is going to raise some eyebrows, and it's going to raise some concern because it should raise some concern. So the picture that you see over here is Christian Wilkins. This is a photo on his Instagram, and he's in a walking boot, same exact ankle that he had surgery on back on October 5th, 2024 to repair that Jones fracture, and he was at Kyle Van Noy's Charity Golf Challenge. This picture was taken on July 23rd. The bad news is this. Christian Wilkins is still in a walking boot nearly 9 months after his surgery. If you didn't see the video that I put out earlier in this week, or actually last Friday, that was titled Breaking News, Christian Wilkins needs another surgery, I encourage you to go check out that video. And in fact, I'm going to put this video down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. That way you can just get a little bit more information on what exactly is going on around Wilkins. And I understand, I've had a lot of Raiders fans go, Mitch, well, why aren't the Raiders talking about it? Why aren't the Raiders beat reporters reporting on it? Watch this video, and you're going to know that answer, plain and simple. Let's go to the other part here of today's show, which is some roster rumors from Tashan Reed. And The Athletic recently released a 53-man roster projection article that was titled, What Did We Learn in OTAs and Minicamp? Today, I'm going to rank the biggest storylines, the biggest rumors from that article, and then ultimately react to it and give you my 2 cents on it, because to me at this time of the offseason, don't get me wrong, I love being able to talk about Max Crosby, Ashton Jeanty, Geno Smith, Christian Wilkins, the big-name players on the Raiders. But at this time of the year, May, June, and July, I don't give a shit what anybody says. To me personally, what I find more interesting is the roster bubble stuff, because it's really the only time that we really talk about it in the entire offseason. So first here, and again, these are ranked based on how interesting I find them. The first juicy Raiders rumor from Tashan Reed is Dylan Laube is going to get cut. Now, I'm not sitting up here saying that Tashan is reporting that Laube's getting cut. I'm simply just saying, just like I make segments all the time, a lot of beat reporters also make segments out there, and when you get somebody's opinion that is at practice, I am going to weigh into my 2 cents as well, because I know that he sees different things that I'm hearing, and I want to be able to react to it. Here's what Tashan had to say on the Raiders running back backfield. Jeanty is the clear-cut lead back, but the Raiders want to avoid running him into the ground. Mostert will be the primary third down back and will help spare Jeanty on early downs alongside McCormick. White will compete with Dylan Laube, a skilled returner, to make the roster. So right now, as it stands, the Raiders running back room, Ashton Jeanty, Raheem Mostert, Sincere McCormick. I'm going to be honest with you. I think all three of those running backs, based on what I am hearing right now, are a lock to make this team, barring injury or honestly barring the Raiders going out and signing another running back. I obviously do not think that's going to happen. But for what Tashan said is he's predicting Dylan Laube gets cut. I'm going to give this one 2 just win babies, and I'm going to say right now at this current moment that I'm filming this video on June 24th, it's a coin flip of whether or not Laube makes the team. I do agree that it comes down to Zamir White and it comes down to Laube, and I think that those 2 guys are going to compete for the final spot. The reason why I'm going to sit up here and call it a coin flip is because Zeus to me is the better running back. Dylan Laube to me is the better special teams player. Depending on what the Raiders are looking for out of that running back spot is really going to illustrate what they decide to do. If it was up to me, I would keep Laube because I need more special teams value because I have confidence in Ashton Jeanty. Though, if the Raiders want to keep the better running back because they're confident in other special teams players, I understand them keeping Zeus over Mr. Laube. Let's go to number 4 here in our juicy Raiders rumors from Tashan Reed. Thayer Munford could start. And where there is smoke, there is fire. And if you would have told me I would have said that statement regarding Thayer Munford, I would have thought it was in terms of a cut. It was in terms of him getting traded. But there's a lot of smoke right now around Munford potentially being a starter for the Silver and Black this upcoming season. And Reed had this to say. There's an ongoing position battle at left guard between Parham, Munford, and Meredith that's worth keeping an eye on. Munford played offensive tackle his first 3 years with the Raiders, but has experience at guard in college. Rookies Grant and Rodgers have a long way to go to get into the rotation. So based on what Reed's saying there, doesn't really sound like Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant have a chance to play this season. And I'll be honest, I've also heard those similar things. I think I've made that pretty clear on this show. But that doesn't mean that Charles Grant and Caleb Rogers aren't showing promise for the long haul. They are showing promise for the long haul. It's just they are rookies, and there's a lot more to learn when you are a rookie compared to some of these guys that have been in the league for multiple seasons. Now, what I find interesting in terms of Munford being a starter, I am going to give this one only one just win, baby, and I'm going to say that there's probably a 15% chance, a 10% chance of this happening. And I say that because I do anticipate Dylan Parham to be the starting left guard. Based on everything I'm hearing right now, it is Colton Miller, Dylan Parham, JPJ, Alex Kappa, DJ Glaze. That's the Raiders starting offensive line. I will say Munford does look good as a backup offensive guard option, and it kind of sounds like he might be the top backup offensive guard option, even over somebody like Jordan Meredith, based on something that I've heard just in the last week or two, right when he was getting done with minicamp. The other thing about Meredith is they kind of like him as a potential backup center option offensive guard. To me, the only way that Munford ends up starting or has a shot to start this season is if Parham does end up getting traded, but I don't think that the Raiders want to trade Parham. If a team picked up the phone and gave him a call, maybe a little bit of a different answer, but the one just win, baby, for Munford starting is because I just think it's going to end up being Parham. Let's go to the next juicy rumor here on today's show, and it's around Trey Taylor, and according to Reed, he has Taylor getting cut. When I did my 53-man roster projection, it really came down to a handful of players, and I bet you if I were to count out each player where I put them, I bet you Trey Taylor was probably number 55 or 54 for me, and I also did not have him in my latest 53-man roster projection. Here's what Reed had to say. Chin will spend a lot of time lined up at nickelback working in the box. When he lined up in those areas in OTAs, the Raiders often brought Johnson onto the field as a third safety. Unless the Raiders sign an upgrade at nickelback, expect that to continue into training camp. Harper was solid last season and may push Johnson for his role. So I know that Trey Taylor's name was not mentioned in Reed's statement there, but I think what you can gather from Reed's statement is it really does sound like they got a four-man rotation in safety. And it's Jeremy Chinn, Isaiah Pola-Mao, Lonnie Johnson Jr., who they signed this offseason. It's also very important to mention that Johnson has a lot of really good ties with Marcus Robinson, Joe Woods. They were together last offseason with the New Orleans Saints. Now, at free safety, I like Taylor. And I think if they keep five safeties, he's got an opportunity to make this squad. For Thomas Harper, though, he's another player that I did not anticipate Harper would show out the way that he has this offseason. He played well last year as well. Sneaky, sneaky guy that could make a big role for this team. In terms of Trey Taylor getting cut, I'm going to go a little bit out on a limb here, and I am going to give this one 3 just win babies. And I'm going to say that it's pretty likely right now at this time, middle of June, if you told me to project what that Raiders roster looks like in August, I'm going to give this one 3 just win babies in terms of him getting cut. And I say that because of how impressive Thomas Harper has been. Because, Trey Taylor was not a part of this regime that was drafted. And when you look at Chris Smith, he's a guy that I don't even think that you can consider bringing to the squad. If Taylor wants to make this team, he's got to be able to show that he can cover as a safety, and he's got to be able to show that he can be a little bit more reliable just in terms of just being a special teams player. So here's going to be a question that I need y'all to answer, and I know it's a tough one because I love Trey Taylor. I really do. Jim Thorpe Award winner. I think that he's good enough to be on all 32 NFL teams. I'm not afraid to say it. But also at the exact same time, I don't know exactly what the Raiders' plan is with them, and I don't know if he knows either. So keep or cut, let me know down below. My answer coming up here after this YouTube ad break. The reason why I'm going to sit up here and cut, it's not because of a Trey Taylor thing. It's because I think the way that this Raiders team is honestly building this roster. They value extra linebackers on special teams. Not saying they don't value safety depth as well, but if the Raiders are sitting up here and saying that Lonnie Johnson Jr. and Thomas Harper are their top 2 options behind Jeremy Chinn and behind Isaiah Pola-Mao, I think it also might worry some people that were a little bit higher on Trey Taylor because I am shocked that our safety room looks the way that it does right now. And if you would have told me our safety room would look the way that it did and Trey Taylor wasn't good enough to make the squad, that also would concern me quite a bit. We got some more juicy rumors coming up here in just a moment, but 4th of July, it's right around the corner, and I'm somebody that's always trying to kill two birds with one stone, though Suavemente might be killing one bird with two stones. The 4th of July shirts, they're out, and we got chatsports.com/RaidersUSA. Mitch, what the hell do you mean two birds, one stone with this shirt? I'm somebody where I always like to have something to wear for events, like I say St. Patty's Day, and I'll say 4th of July. I just don't have a lot of green stuff. I also don't have a lot of red, white, and blue shirts. I really, truly don't. But I also always like to be able to rock the nation, and if I'm going to a pool, I think a great shirt to be able to wear is the team that you rock, right? Like, you go to the pool with your Raiders shirt on, 4th of July, it's a win-win. If you're like, dude, I'm not going to wear anything red, white, and blue, I'll just wear something Raiders-related, I'll be honest, if you go to chatsports.com/RaidersUSA, you can also get a bunch of other Raiders gear as well. That's like Salute to Service, where they have camouflage hats, they got some different types of hoodies, and there's a bunch of different stuff. But if you are like, dude, I don't know what to wear for the 4th of July, and I want to wear something Raiders-related, it's literally me. Chatsports.com/RaidersUSA. I got that link for you guys. Again, down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. Let's go to the second juiciest rumor from this Tashan Reed article. It's the Las Vegas Raiders are going to keep Zach Carter, and he has them keeping 7 defensive tackles. So I tried to combine 2 into 1 simply because I thought this one was that big and that deserving of being number 1. Here's what Reed had to say on his logic behind keeping the 7 defensive tackles and Carter. The Raiders flip between 4 and 5-man fronts throughout OTAs, but we'll go with a 5-man front as their base given the precarious state of their nickelback position. Wilkins missed all of OTAs as he continues to recover from the Jones fracture he suffered last October, and his health will be a major storyline going into training camp. Carter has replaced Wilkins during his absence. If Wilkins misses time in training camp, it'll be interesting to see if rookies Hemingway and Pegues can create some competition. Now, I think the number one thing that some people are going to see there is, all right, well, when Wilkins has been out, that means that Zach Carter has been getting an opportunity to get out there on the field. I'll be real. I have heard of Carter getting some work with some of the first-team options, and I get why he has. But let me be very transparent. I really think that the only way that Carter ends up making this squad as if the Raiders are legitimately concerned with Christian Wilkins. And if you're not somewhat concerned with going on with Wilkins, either A, you're not subscribed to the Raiders Report, B, you've been living underneath a rock, and C, you don't have Instagram and you don't have any social media because, again, Christian Wilkins, there's a photo of him right now still in a walking boot. In terms of Zach Carter, though, making this team, I am going to give this one 2 just win babies, and I'm going to say people are talking. According to Reed and according to everyone that I've been talking to, Wilkins, Fotu, and Butler are the top 3 clear defensive tackles on this Las Vegas Raiders team. It's just what's been reported. It's what I've been saying as well. It's why I had Fotu making my roster, and it's why I kind of, it's why I disagreed with Vinny a few days ago saying that he didn't have Fotu making his 53-man. To me, though, if the Raiders end up keeping Carter, that's bad news for Wilkins' health. And if the Raiders end up keeping 7 defensive tackles, that's bad news for Carter's health. Like, they're going to keep Hemingway. They're going to keep Pegues. Jonnu Laulu is a player that this team does like, and he's going to make this roster. Like, I don't think they're going to keep Carter over Laulu. That's not what's going to happen in my book. So to me, you're sitting up here going, well, if we're going to keep these 3 guys, we're going to keep our 2 rookies that we ended up drafted. You're going to keep Laulu. That's 6 defensive tackles. For a team to keep 7 DTs when you are already spending the amount of money that the Raiders have at defensive tackle and at defensive end, it means that one of those guys you're unsure about. And I think right now it's easy to point the finger and go, the Raiders are clearly unsure with Christian Wilkins, and I think Tashan Reed knows that. Let's go to the number 1 juiciest rumor, though, from that article, and it's UDFA Jah Joyner making the roster. So when I looked at this Tashan Reed 53-man breakdown, 12 defensive linemen, 7 defensive tackles, 5 edge rushers. That tells me that there's some unsurety, I don't even know if that's a word, uncertainty is probably the better word, around the Raiders' defensive line. So here's what Reed had to say on the defensive ends. Wilson and Snowden are jockeying to be the first defensive end off the bench. It's a pivotal year for Wilson as the Raiders decide on his 5th-year option after the season. Barring a major breakout, they'll almost certainly decline it. Joyner is a bendy, explosive pass rusher who can make some noise once the pads come on in training camp. Now, I'll say this. You could also look at that and sit up here and go, well, that's interesting because Wilson and Snowden are battling for that defensive 3 spot. I'll be real. If Tyree Wilson cannot beat out Charles Snowden with everything going on with Snowden this offseason, because, again, his court case is right at the start of when the veterans have to report to training camp on July 22nd. That's going to be very concerning for Wilson. In terms of Jah Joyner making the 53-man roster, I'll give this one just win, baby, and I'll say that it's a small shred of truth. But let's not get it twisted. I am rooting my you-know-what off for Joyner to make this squad because he was my number 1 graded UDFA signing by the Raiders. If you don't believe me, go watch my UDFA grades. Go watch my UDFA signings video. He was somebody that we had slotted down here at Chat Sports that could be a 5th to 6th round pick coming out of Minnesota. I do expect the Raiders to keep 4 to 5 defensive ends, so it kind of aligns with what the Raiders are doing. But to me, I don't know if the Raiders would end up keeping a guy like Jah Joyner and cutting somebody like a Trey Taylor, cutting somebody maybe like a Tommy Eichenberg, cutting somebody, that you could get a little bit more help on from the secondary, because I think there's a little bit more question marks in the secondary. To me, though, I do think that right now Jah Joyner is a player to keep in mind, and I don't know exactly how he's going to fit into that rotation, but if you do think that there's some upside there, and I almost wonder if the upside is a little bit more as a stand-up outside linebacker, where you kind of look for a potential Caleb Von Chasen replacement. You kind of look for somebody that can play almost like that Devin White role, and I don't know what the role Devin White's going to play. I'm simply just saying what role I would put White in, where you allow him to be an athlete, let him be a stand-up linebacker, pin his ears back, and get north and south. Another player that I've brought up multiple times on the show is Azeez Ojulari, and I'm not saying Jah Joyner is Azeez Ojulari, but that role of an outside linebacker in a Patrick Graham system, when you have 5 guys on the defensive line and you let that other guy stand up and kind of roam around, I do think with the skill set that Joyner has, it fits, because the simplest way that I can describe the type of player Joyner is to maybe a Raiders fan, that I always get asked, what's an NFL comp? Imagine the way that you viewed Malcolm Kuntz his first year into the NFL, not like 3rd round pick coming out of Buffalo. It was after that first year, it was a player that you saw had talent, can't really do anything in the run game, but can get it going if he's in the right system. To me, that's what Jah Joyner is, and if Tashan's talking about him keeping the team, definitely a player we got to keep a little bit of a closer eye on during training camp.